Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Hello again, and welcome back. Thank you so much for listening wherever you are and on whatever platform you are listening to us on. Today's topic is going to be focused on reflection, reminiscing, and just sharing wisdom in general. We have the opportunity as coaches to learn so much from the experiences of others, and that is what we're going to dedicate today's episode to. And I'm very happy to be joined by Coach Rick Landera, who's going to share some of the lessons that he has learned as a veteran and as an experienced coach. Coach, how are you today?
Doing great. And yourself?
I am doing wonderful. Really excited to get into this. I think for younger coaches, it's always great for them to be able to hear the wisdom from others. And I think for older, more experienced coaches, I think that this will be a great opportunity to kind of reminisce kind of right along with us about the lessons that they've learned through their coaching journey. So let's jump right into it, Coach. Let's go into your coaching journey. Where has the game taken you? What stops have you made along the way? And where are you at right now?
Oh, wow. That is an interesting question because it's been a long journey. I have been coaching now for 18 years. I've been a teacher in 17 of those. Actually, 17 of those years I've been teaching. Fortunate to be teaching in all those years. And the interesting thing was I never imagined myself as a high school student, and even at the beginning of college, I never imagined myself a teacher. Basketball is really what drew me into it. I was fortunate enough to get my first coaching job as a head JV coach when I was 19 years old. I had a former coach of mine, my middle school coach, who actually took over at a high school, and just said, "Hey, are you interested in coaching?" And I hadn't thought about it up until that point. So I gambled on it. I took the job. It paid a whopping $1,000 for the entire year. But I haven't looked back since. I've coached at about 7 different schools in different capacities, head JV coach, assistant varsity coach, associate head coach, and I was a head coach for 5 years. 5 years ago, I actually stepped away from being a head coach to go back to my alma mater, where I went to high school and played. And that was always kind of my goal when I got into coaching, was I wanted to make it back to be the head coach in my alma mater. So I actually stepped away from my job as a head coach that I worked hard to get, and didn't have a coaching job for about maybe 3 months until the head coach at my alma mater said, "Hey, why don't you come coach with us?" I had just started teaching there at my alma mater, which is another part of the goal that I always wanted. I always wanted to go back and teach and coach at my school. So for 4 years, I was an assistant coach there, and then I got the opportunity. Our head coach was let go, and I got the opportunity to interview for the head coach. And I thought, everything is coming full circle. This is exactly where I want to be. And unfortunately, I didn't get the job. I think being the assistant and part of the previous program may have played a role into why I didn't get that job, but I think the school just wanted to go in a different direction. The school that I work for is a private all-boys Catholic school. It's a very good academic school as well as a very good athletic school. Our football program has won the state championship this previous year and played for the state championship, lost in overtime the year before that. So they wanted to go in a different direction, and I actually, I think they chose the right guy in the direction they wanted to choose. They went kind of the trainer route. They went for a guy who's very prominent in our community, basketball-wise, and he's an NBA trainer. Trains, the likes of the Tyler Heroes. He's got James Wiseman, who might be the number 1 pick in the draft coming up now. So he's a guy who has a lot of clout in the basketball community, and I think our basketball program had been, I don't want to say underachieving, but underwhelming the previous years. And I was a part of that program too. So
Right.
I didn't get that job. I stayed on as an assistant coach for this past year. But I realized, head coaching is something I really want to do. And if I'm going to do that again, I've got to put myself out there once again. And I decided to step away from coaching at that time.
Mm.
And we'll see what kind of opportunities present themselves now. I actually have an interview for a head coaching position next week. We'll see how that goes. But, one of the things that I think I've learned, and I think to me this is probably the most important thing, was that I have to be willing to take on challenges if I want to be successful. If you expect things to come to you, they're not. This is the type of profession that you have to make things happen for yourself. And that goes with running a program. If you want to be successful, you have to try new things. And I think what better profession do you get that opportunity when you get to make these kinds of decisions and you get to put yourself in these positions on a daily basis to help kids grow and learn these lessons, as well as yourself. I mean, I've learned so much in my 18 years. There's definitely too much for this podcast, I can tell you that.
Well, I think that you bring up a great point about just the opportunity that we have, that coaching gives us, that opportunity to help kids grow, and we're the ones in control, so to speak, of the direction that we want our program to look like, and we want our team to go in, and we have such a opportunity to leave such an impact on the kids that we serve, and we get to do it through coaching basketball or teaching. And so to me, I
Absolutely.
can't think of anything that's any better than that. Yeah, so
I
that's
agree.
great. So let's take a step back to we'll start with year one. We're going to go all the way back in the beginning of year one in your coaching journey, right when you first started out. What did you think, if anything, what did you think that you knew then about coaching? What were your ideas about the coaching profession, and what were some immediate lessons that you learned right in that first year?
Well, the first year I started coaching, I thought I knew everything. I mean, I'm like, oh, this is made for me, like I know what to do in every situation. But I quickly found out that I knew nothing. Um, it was a good thing too, because I was ready to be molded. And I was fortunate enough to work with a guy who had coached me, so I understood how he wanted things done, which is good. But he also kind of threw me into the fire at the same time. He wasn't like, all right, this is what I want you to do. It was more like, you can see what we're doing on varsity, and then you can try to replicate that. And I was like, okay, sure. And then you realize that when it's your turn in front of the mic, per se, you don't always know what to say. So that year I coached a team that probably had zero talent. It might be the least talented team I have ever had. So that also plays a role into growing and learning, but it might have been the best thing for me, because we kind of grew together, and I still have contact with those guys. I mean, those guys were only 3-4 years younger than I was. And, I fortunately can still communicate with some of those guys now. But I learned so much that first year. And I think probably the most important thing I learned was patience.
Mm.
I was not patient at all at the beginning. I had a hard time when they wouldn't get what it was that I was the point I was trying to get across, or the drill, or the, just the situation.
Right.
But that set the tone for who I would eventually become. And I think, if most coaches that know me now, one of the things that they'll characterize me with is a patient guy.
Mm.
Patience isn't easy when it comes to coaching. And I think I've learned that throughout this process, whether it be with officiating, whether it be with coaching, whether it be with assistant coaches, even students. Patience is something that I've developed, and I think has played a role into some of the success that I have been able to have.
And yeah, it's hard, I think, especially for young coaches to exercise that patience, because like you said, you knew everything when you first started. So when you think you know everything, and when you think that you are gonna revolutionize the game or completely change the game when you're very, very young. And then, the players just aren't picking up on it as quickly as you think they should. I know that could lead to like frustration, and then you get like,
Oh,
like, why aren't you getting it? And then you just have to learn that you have to be patient. You have to meet them where they're at, because like you kind of mentioned, in some cases, they're just going to be a few youngers than you are if you're a really, really young coach, and it just takes time.
yeah, there was a lot of frustration that first year,
Hmm.
but again, like I think it allowed me to stay open minded to learning new things, and I think one of the things I do pride myself is that I'm a learner more than anything now. Like,
Hmm.
speaking with you, seeing which Twitter is a great learning tool. I mean, I'm constantly looking for ways, reading books, watching videos, whatever it is, that I'm constantly looking for new things to learn and new
Hmm.
ways to coach. And I mean, I've changed my philosophy on coaching two or three times throughout the years because it's almost necessary.
Hmm.
The more information our kids are getting, the more the more they're going to ask questions, the more they're going to want to know why you're doing things, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
I grew up playing basketball where it was what I call the old school mentality. You listen to your coaches, you did what your coaches said, whether you agreed with it or not.
Hmm.
I look back at my high school coach, and I work with him to this day. Like, he's a guy that I work with on a daily basis, and I've got a great relationship with him now. I didn't have a great relationship with him in high school.
Hmm.
Just an old school coach.
Yeah.
We did what we were told, and we didn't always like it or agree with it, but we did it. But there wasn't that real connection, that real relationship that I think that is something that's so important to me today.
Mhm. Well, it brings up a great point that you mentioned about constantly learning, constantly looking for ways to grow and reflect on your own practices. Because I know that as a teacher myself, that the way that teaching is conducted, even 20 years ago, is a lot different than the way it's conducted now. And so it only makes sense that your coaching would follow that same philosophy, where you can keep some core values and principles across the years, but you should always be looking to learn and to expose yourself to new ideas. And you might not agree with every idea that you see, but at least you're kind of aware of what's going on, and at least aware of the changes that are happening in the coaching practice. I think that that's just a good habit to get into, being a lifelong learner. Mhm. So let's go into your first year then, when you took over as a head coach, that very first time, and you took over having experience previously in other coaching positions. Did you find that there was another learning curve that you had to experience when you became a head coach for the first time?
Absolutely. And I was fortunate the two previous stops before becoming a head coach. I worked with some really good coaches. I
Hmm.
mean, I, that's the wrong word. I worked with some great coaches. One of them took over a college program recently, and the other one isn't coaching anymore. But I mean, what I learned from him as far as managing personalities and helping kids get the most out of what they want to do, I mean, that was all great. And I also came from a program. When I first got my opportunity to be a head coach, I came from a program that we lost in the game before going to the state semifinals. So, I was coming from a program that had a lot of success. And the first thing that I realized as a head coach was that coaching basketball was only going to be about 20% of my job. That was the toughest lesson about it, because here I was all excited about being able to do all these wonderful things basketball wise and run my program the way I wanted to finally do it. And getting to that part was always hard, because I had to fundraise, I had to meet with parents, I had to have administrative meetings and worry about grades and do all the things that I never had to do as an assistant coach, because I worked with some great head coaches who had that on lock. And it made my job as an assistant coach easy, where I just had to coach basketball. So that was probably the biggest shell shock lesson that I learned. And then, of course, how to do that. I had to seek out advice of the coaches that I had worked with before, and seek out to the advice of ministers, because every school is also different. The way things are done in one school isn't going to be the way things are done in another school. So I really had to work with the athletic director. I really had to work with the principal, and the hardest part about that was I wasn't teaching at the school that I was coaching.
Mm.
It wasn't until I went back to my alma mater that I coached for the very first time in the school that I was teaching at as well, which is something that happens often here in Miami.
Mm.
So that was that first lesson. But I also was very fortunate to have an amazing group of kids my first year. I mean, we had a lot of success my first year. We probably should have gone to the state semifinals. The only reason we didn't, well, I'm not going to say the only reason we didn't. One of the reasons that we didn't was my wife actually got sick about, I think it was a few days prior, probably about 5 or 6 days prior to our regional semifinal game. Had we won that game, we go play in the regional final. We win that, we go to states. My wife got sick. She was just not feeling well, and I took her to the hospital, and within hours, her organs were failing. Nobody knew what was going on. They had to intubate her, and somebody even came in the room and said that we should prepare ourselves. That means she might not make it. So obviously that became priority number one. I missed practice that week, and I was obviously hoping that at some point things would get to a point where I could go and coach in the game, but that never happened. So I had my assistant coach the game, and this was my first year. So I kind of just inherited an assistant from the previous program. So like I knew him, he was a good guy, and I had known him previously, but never, like we never really, I guess he was kind of a guy that just followed along what I was doing. He was a great assistant coach in that way, did whatever I asked him to do, but I don't think being a head coach was something he ever really wanted. So being put in that position, I think he was not ready for that. And it was tough for the kids too, because, we had kind of a magical season, where we didn't start off great. We hit our stride. We had some bumps along the way, but, basketball wise, we really hit our peak going into the playoffs, and we were playing unbelievable basketball at that time. And we were about to play a perennial powerhouse here in Miami. 3 of those guys that we played in that game would go on and play Division I basketball. I didn't have a single Division I basketball player on my team. In fact, I had 2 guys play Division III basketball. One of them actually made it 4 years. So, that was what we had, but it was just a great group of kids that loved each other, that played hard and did whatever was asked of them, and they were successful. And my wife got sick, and then I couldn't be there. We ended up losing the game by 4 points. I got to watch it on FaceTime because a buddy of mine went to the game and put it up for me, because we didn't have all these technology that we have nowadays. So.
Right.
Get for that season, but it was still a great season, and still looked at as a success, and I still talk to these kids, and those are the things that we talk about. The one thing they love to remind me was that my assistant coach didn't call one timeout in the game.
That's funny. Oh man, that's well. What you bring up is a really good point. I think, in terms of the responsibilities that you undertake as a head coach, in that you have the title of like head coach, but then with that, it's like program builder. And if you're going to be the program builder, like you said, there's so much more involved with that in terms of the parent involvement, the fundraising, all the other things that go into building a program. But that's kind of all wrapped in to the responsibility of being a head coach, is you are responsible for those things. And one of the things that you've mentioned a few times that I want to touch on is the importance that other coaches have had on you, and the important things that you've learned from other coaches. So I want to talk about that really quickly. What has been the importance of other coaches in your coaching career, and why do you think it's so important for younger coaches especially to make sure that they're linked up with different coaches and working and learning from other coaches?
That's a great question. I think there's really 2 parts to that, in my opinion. The first part was that I think that what made those guys great was that they weren't always in control of every aspect of it. They really gave me, especially when I was younger, which I hadn't earned yet, they really gave me the opportunity and a voice in practice to say some of the things that I wanted to say, to coach the kids up, to give ideas and be a part of, building, whether it was a defensive strategy, an offensive strategy, or even, building the program. As a young JV coach, it was kind of, I was handed the keys and said, hey, you're responsible. You're going to be partly responsible for getting these guys ready for varsity. And I took that as, as a challenge. Like, I wasn't interested in necessarily winning JV games. What made me the most satisfied was getting as many kids as I could to be prepared and make that varsity team and be contributors on that varsity team. That's where I looked at a lot of my success of those years. And I think a lot of that had to do with the faith that was put into me as a young coach. And as I got older and I got the opportunity to be a head coach, I knew that was something I always wanted to give back. I always wanted to help. Like, my question was always, when I hired an assistant, or even when I inherited him, I was like, do you want to be a head coach? And, if the answer was always yes, then I said, I'm going to do whatever it is that I can to help you be that head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And at times that may be frustrating because it may seem like, I'm making you do something that you might not even want to do, but that's part of the growth. And I think it's what they did for me that I always want to give back.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that, they were great at involving me in those other parts. When I first took over as a head coach and all those other things, the fundraising and all their non-basketball related things that I had to do, I may not have been ready for, because I don't think you could truly be ready for it until you're part of that and you have to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I was involved. So I got to see how they handled situations. I got to see how they handled the program building aspects, the rules, or, just how you wanted to schedule things, preseason, off season, all of those things. I got to be involved in those decisions and the way that they were set up. And it helped me to be able to at least first establish the way I wanted to do things, and then see how eventually I would put my own spin on them.
Mm-hmm.
So those are I think the most important things that I learned. And had I not had these great guys to work for, I don't know if I would have learned some of those things, or I would have had to learn the hard way with some of the mistakes I made. And I made a lot. As a head coach, I made a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on those experiences and think about, man, if I knew what I knew now. But I mean, I think that's something that we all say, whether it's head coaches or in any aspect of life. But it's through those lessons that I've been able to make a difference in some kids' lives, to do things for other people that maybe I wouldn't have done had I not seen it done from some of these people.
Right. Well, there's two parts to what you said that I think are so important. Is that if you are a JV or assistant coach and you have that aspiration to go and become a head coach, then you need to advocate for that need and talk to your head coach and say, like, hey, like, I'm willing to, take on these responsibilities because this is my aspiration to become a head coach. And on the other side, if you are a head coach, to know with your assistants, like, oh, is your goal to be a head coach? Well, here are some responsibilities that I'm going to entrust in you to do to kind of get you ready for that. Because when you do apply for those head coaching positions and you have a lot of experience, I think being an assistant coach, what your responsibility was as an assistant coach is very unknown to a lot of people, because it varies so much in terms of how much responsibility you had or what you were expected to do. And so I think that's a great point, is to really advocate for what you want if you're an assistant coach, and if you're a head coach and you have eager assistants, to give them the opportunity to coach, because that's the only way they're going to get better at it, is they have to be given those responsibilities, especially if you want to grow that coaching tree to have those great assistants that become head coaches as well. And you touched on program building, and I'm glad you did, because that was one of the questions that I had. And I know that it's a very general one. I know that program building is kind of this big overarching thing, but when you think of program building, What comes to mind now? What do you think is important in terms of building a program, and how has that kind of evolved over the years to what you currently think right now?
That's a great question too. I think early on, my idea of program building was making a great basketball team. Um, I've learned that sometimes that's more of a result than actually something that you're striving to build. Uh, my the biggest takeaway from all these years as an assistant and as a head coach is that I think that character building, it needs to be at the forefront of building your program. Developing, you know, kids with great character, kids who are tough, and by tough I don't mean physical, that they take on punishment, or that they're ready to fight, but tough-minded kids who can handle adversity. Because one of the things I've noticed over the years is that is becoming more necessary nowadays. Kids aren't as adept at handling adversity as they may have been in the past, and that could just be perception, but I'm seeing the need more to help kids with that. Nowadays, you'll see more parents getting involved. You'll see more people trying to handle situations for them rather than letting them deal with whatever tough parts are coming their way. And I think that's one of the first steps that I try to develop now is who are we going to be when things get tough? Who are we going to be when things are not going our way? And I think that sets a great foundation for the rest of it. It helps us, to be better basketball players. It helps us to handle our responsibilities in the classroom better. It also helps us to understand that we do need to depend on one another. So it sets the stage for all the things that we want as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Every coach wants a tough team who's going to go out there, play together, take the charges, make the extra pass. Well, if we're not teaching them how to have the mindset to do that, then we're asking too much of them. I think that's where my programs now I'll always start with. I used to think back in the day, like, oh, if I had more talented kids, I'd be a much better coach, right? And then I got the more talented kids, and I coached some really talented teams throughout the years, and some of them were successful and some of them weren't. And it really had nothing to do with the talent. It was always the character. It was always what type of character they were, what type of teammates were they, and I think that's always going to be now, regardless. I mean, I'm sure I'll learn some new things along the way in the next 18 years, but I think character building will always be number one when it comes to program building.
And I think that it makes sense in terms of the character building with the mindset that I know you have and a lot of coaches have, and I like to think I do as well, which is, the growth of the person and not just the basketball player. And that if you're growing, their character, and they're learning how to deal with adversity or tough situations, and they're learning that through basketball, well, that's going to be a transferable skill that they're going to be able to use in all other areas of their life as well. And so if you really do care about making an impact on people's lives, I think building that character, building that toughness and those things within them are going to be things, like I said, that are just going to carry on far past their basketball playing days. And that's part of your legacy as a coach as well. And so with that, kind of on the other end, are there things over the years, maybe in terms of program building or team building or just in general, that you've kind of done away with or you've de-emphasized? You've kind of touched on a couple, but are there things that maybe you thought, okay, this is really important to my team, or this is going to be really important to my program, but now over the years you're like, maybe this doesn't matter as much as I thought it did?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to go with philosophy. Like, I used to think that I needed to be the primary voice in my program. I used to think that I had to have a control and a hand in everything that we did. I was controlling how they bonded as a team. I was controlling, what type of, who was talking, who was going to be the captain, who was going to be responsible. And usually it was always my voice. So I may have had a captain, but it didn't matter because he didn't really talk much because it was always me.
Yeah.
I'm almost the complete opposite of that now. Like, yeah, I'll talk and I kind of guide and I push people in directions that that I want them to go, but it's all about the team now. They lead the team now. The players are the ones that drive almost everything we do now. And the first thing I say on day one, whenever we have our first meeting, or whatever the case is, I'm like, this is your team. The season is going to go the way you want this to go. If there's something you don't agree with, that needs to be brought up to me. I really give them the opportunity to be the voices in there. And obviously there are going to be certain individuals that have a louder voice than others, but each person should feel that they have a voice. And I think that has also enabled us to build better character, because they're willing to do things. When I would say, hey guys, yeah, let's be great teammates, do all these things, let's communicate with one another. But if I'm the only one speaking, how am I going to expect them to communicate? Every coach wants a team that talks on the floor. Well, if they don't do it in practice, they're not going to do it in a game. If they don't talk to each other when they leave that gym, they're not going to talk to each other in practice. So you're not going to get all these things that you say you want if you're the only voice. And I think that's definitely been the biggest change that I've made over the years. And there's been some other things, things that, certain aspects of program building, like certain levels of like requirements of participation in different things. Like I used to be a big rule guy, like, oh, you have to be here 15 minutes before practice. You have to be, and being on time is an important thing, but I used to be a rule. I'd have 6 or 7 rules for the team. And I used to think, oh, I don't have a lot of rules, guys. There's not a lot to follow, but it was controlled every aspect of what it was. And I don't have rules anymore. I don't do rules. I do standards. I go, if we want to be the best team that we can be, we've got to be on time. We've got to be here at things, but I also make it a place where they want to be, right? So 15 minutes before practice starts, I haven't, in the last 3 years, I haven't had a kid who's really been late because they're getting extra work in, or I'm getting the shooting machine up, or I'm making it a place that they want to be at 15 minutes before, because they see the correlation between that and getting better and growing, and then playing time and things like that. They know that if they work hard, the opportunity is going to come. I used to be a guy that was afraid to play, a kid who might not have been as skilled, or because I was worried about what it looked like outside. And I don't care about that anymore. I care about helping each individual kid. And when everybody wants that, everybody says that, but you got to do some of the hard things, like putting that kid in a game, in a game situation where your team is down 3 points and you've got a kid who hasn't been in that situation before. He's not going to learn in practice. It helps, but he's not going to learn that in practice. He's got to know that I trust him. And how's he going to learn that I trust him? I'm going to put him in a situation that he may not be ready for. And he may fail in that situation. And the first thing I'm going to say is, good job. All right. I put you in a tough situation. You didn't fold completely. You may not have gotten the job done. You may have missed a shot, or you may have, whatever the case is, but I still trust you. And I think that goes a long way with building all those qualities that every coach says that they want. The toughness, the communication, the competitiveness. If a coach controls those aspects, most kids, I've had great kids that I've coached, like they're gonna look to find a way to do the things that you're telling them to do. If you give them the freedom to say, oh, I can be my own person, they're gonna buy into that level more, because they feel that they have some sort of voice and some power in it.
Yeah. Well, It sounds like, Coach, it sounds like you're having more fun now. It sounds like it's a more enjoyable time that you're having with coaching now. Am I right in thinking that? Just everything that you're saying now of how you've evolved, it just sounds like it's just a more fun experience for you and for everyone.
It's a lot less stressful. It is a lot less frustrating, because, all those negative things that used to drive me crazy before are the things that I look forward to now. Like I look forward to those really rough practices where things don't look like they're going well and everybody's frustrated and you've got somebody throwing a fit on the side. And those are the times that I kind of secretly smile and I was like, all right, we're getting something done here. The ones that our practices look great, those are the ones that worry me now. Because I'm like, wait, things are going too well. Something's wrong here.
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately you don't know. You don't know how it's going to translate into the game. And I've seen it happen where we'll have these terrible practices. Back in the day, if I had a terrible practice, I couldn't even sleep. I'm like, I can't believe how bad practice was last night. And then, things work out. So it's a different way of coaching, I think, that I've adopted. And I am seeing more success success isn't necessarily always quantified in wins and losses, but I'm seeing kids that are happier. I'm seeing kids that want to be a part of what we're doing more. I'm seeing, 1 through however many kids I have, if it's 12 or 15, I'm seeing all of them enjoying the process. One of the things I started to implement over the last 6 years, I believe it is now that I've been doing it, as I have these end of season meetings where I literally tell them like, hey, this is your time to help me be better.
Mm.
So you better be honest with me. And my first couple years, there were a lot of negative things, like coach yelled too much, or, there were times that I was afraid to make a mistake. And now it's the opposite. It's like, man, coach, this is the most fun I've ever had playing basketball. Oh, coach, I love that drill that we used to do every day. Whatever it was, coach, I really think that I learned so much about basketball this year. And a lot of it, and usually when I ask them why, it's because they weren't afraid. They felt that they had power and control over what their opportunities could be. And, all the things that we fear as coaches, the parent criticism, the players who are unhappy or are, that question is, am I making a positive impact? Those usually get answered in those meetings. There are always going to be parents that are unhappy, but most of the time when I ask the parents that are unhappy, like, hey, have you spoken to your son about this? The answer is always no, he doesn't know that I'm talking with you. And I'm like, I encourage you to ask them and
Yeah.
see what they say before. And then if he has the same questions you have, then you can come back and talk to me. And usually it's an apologetic return. Oh, coach, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that my son said he's having so much fun, and he enjoys it. And he knows why he may not be on the court as often as he could be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
those are definitely part of the things that have changed and helped me as a coach.
Well, I love the idea of having those meetings and really listening to your players, because they're the ones who are gonna be honest with you about how things are going and what their experience is like. And I think that it's easy to maybe just assume that, like, oh, like I know what I'm doing, so if the players don't like it, well, that's on them. But like that's not a good approach to have at all. Like, you need to make sure you're getting that feedback, and not only that, but taking it to heart and making adjustments if needed. And I think something that we're kind of touched on is that if your players aren't enjoying themselves and if they're not having a good experience, then who is it a good experience for? Like, this shouldn't be about you as a coach and the experience that like necessarily you're getting, but it's about the team and the players and what kind of experience are we giving them. And I think that those meetings are a really good opportunity to kind of get that feedback, and I'm really glad that a lot of it has been positive. And it's funny too that you talked about the bad practices and not being able to get to sleep, because I've been there before. And I remember that somebody told me once, it was a teacher, because as teachers we kind of have that as well. Like, if a lesson doesn't go well, like you get like frustrated and losing sleep over it. But I remember a teacher told me once that, like, your kids aren't losing sleep if your lesson didn't go well. Like, they're going to sleep just fine. So don't be the one who's taking it all on yourself. And it's kind of like the same way with practices. Like, if your practice doesn't go that well, chances are your players aren't losing any sleep over it. And so don't beat yourself over it, up over it too much either. And so I think that's just sounds a lot less stressful the way that you're approaching things now. And
It
you've
is.
talked about practice, and so I did want to talk about that, about how is your kind of approach to practices changed? How have you been able to maybe get more efficient with practice and get the most out of practice? And in general, what advice would you give to younger coaches in terms of practice planning and getting the most out of their practices?
Wow. I mean, that's something that's probably changed the most.
Mm.
Part of what I mentioned too prior. changing the culture and my voice and all those things. Practice has been the vehicle that I've been able to use to change all of that. You know, I used to be a 2-hour guy, sometimes 2.5 hours, you know, drills, everything perfectly planned out. We're going to do this drill, this drill, this drill. I used to be, if I saw a drill online, I was using it. You know, it didn't matter if it was good or not. And when it didn't look good, it wasn't, you know, I was upset. I was frustrated. I was on the players about it. I mean, I have done away with almost everything that I did probably prior to coming back to coach in my alma mater. Even my years as a head coach, I think there were some things that I did that I really liked. I was always a big proponent of competitive stuff, but you know, again, being a lifelong learner, I just there's one in particular, Chris Oliver at Basketball Immersion, who's had a significant impact on what it is that I do, just the ideas of small-sided games and, you know, putting them in situations, offensive, defensive situations where it's, you know, where you can add elements of pressure and constraint to, so that it forces the learning process rather than me telling them how I want to see them do something. That's been what's changed the most, putting them in situations and keeping my mouth shut and letting them go through it and learning through mistakes, learning through those failures, learning through those situations where they can help each other out. My practices have gotten, you know, if we go an hour and a half, that might be the longest I think I went this year. There may have been some times that I do 2 hours, but usually if I'm doing 2 hours, it's a 15, 20 minute, 30 minutes prior of skill development that is run by the players, where I kind of say, hey, the gym's going to be open at this time. There'll be a shooting machine here, you know, and if you want something specific, come talk to me and I'm there. My assistant coaches are going to be there. Grab one of them, grab me, whatever you need, and work on what you want to work on. And then even afterwards, a lot of shooting. You know, I always looked back at my every year and I said, man, we didn't do enough shooting. I think I have said that every year that I have ever coached. And over the course of the last 2 years, I was actually somewhat satisfied with it, where I was like, wow, we did a lot of shooting this year, but I think I can do more. You know, that's something that I just think, especially as it pertains to the game now, like you can't get enough of. So that's something that I've implemented a lot more into practice. I usually only do maybe 3 drills max, where my whole practices were drills. And then when we got to 5-on-5, we got there kind of thing, where it's the drills that I do now are either 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or 5-on-5. They're usually full court, where I used to do so much in the half court, and then I'd say, hey, I want to run, which doesn't really make sense. And then usually it's still a game. The drill is still a game, with just different rules or constraints or objectives in there. And I've just seen such a difference in the growth of the kids. I mean, my favorite drill, and I've been looking to change the name because I think I can do better with that. It was called the kill drill last year. And you know, I got it from Texas Tech coach who, you know, when they made it to the championship game, he, you know, some article came out about this kill drill, which is you want to get 3 kills. 3 kills is 3 stops in a row. Right. And that's a drill. There's no other way to score in the drill. You get 3 stops in a row, you get 1 kill. The first team that gets 3 wins. So, I mean, that drill gave us everything. It gave us, you know, teams that could turn up the defense when they know they needed to, because they needed that one more stop. It allowed the offense to learn better execution. You know, I wouldn't say a word in the drill. Like, they were allowed 2 timeouts each. 2 timeouts for the entire game. So they had to learn how to utilize their timeouts wisely. They communicated with one another what they wanted to do. I gave them the freedom to change up the strategy if they wanted to switch on defense, if whatever pick and roll coverage they wanted to run. I mean, it got to a point where kids came in and was like, Coach, when are we playing? When are we doing the kill drill? When are we doing the kill drill? And I was just like, you know, this has got to be almost an everyday thing. But then I started realizing I'm not going to make it every day, because, you know, I want them I want them to kind of figure out how to utilize that drill as well. So, when we knew that we were going to play a certain team that played a certain coverage, like, coach, can we run the kill drill and we'll only do it this way? And I even had like my second team kind of say, coach, what does the other team run so we can run that against our first team? Like, this was coming from them. It wasn't coming from me. And I'm just like, I couldn't believe the results that we were getting from that drill. And it completely translated to the game, which was always something I had a hard time with. Like, why, if we practice this over and over again, is it not happening in the game? Well, it was a waste of time. I've been trying to get rid of those waste of time drills and just trying to find the things that matter the most to our team. And again, I've seen success, but my last 5 years has been as a JV coach. So while I've seen success there, I have implemented some of that in our varsity level, and again, it's helped. But I'm interested to see what it will look like with the varsity program, because what I decided those couple of years ago was I'm going to change the way that I do things and experiment, like take these risks of putting the kind of the control into the players' hands, making practices as fun as possible. I mean, that's almost my most important thing now. Like, at the end of practice, we're like, guys, do you have fun today? And I mean, most of the time it's a roaring yes. And then if you have the one kid that says no, it's because he had a rough day at practice. And I was like, hey, just remember, you might have been frustrated with the way you played today, but that's going to come back and help you. And, we don't always get that when we're 14, 15 years old moment. But, that's when I ask him at the end of the year, hey, remember that practice that you were upset with and all that? I'll go, do you think that paid off? Did it help? And they're like, yeah, it did. So it's just something that I'm seeing that, I just want to keep learning. And, I love to see what coaches are doing out there. If I can go and visit a practice, I love to go visit practices, and I love to share this knowledge. Like, that's something that, I've been reaching out to coaches for the last couple of years, as many as I can. I was like, hey, you should see this drill that I did today. This might help your team, and especially if I know certain coaches that want to play a certain way, my thing is about helping the kids develop the creativity to do certain things, and I've learned that the more structure we give them, the less creativity there is.
Right.
And that's part of me kind of giving it to them. Like, hey, what do you guys run on offense? What do you like to do? And, sometimes that really pays off, especially when it comes to like end game situations. I used to practice end game situations. I'm like, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And then we get into that situation. We did exactly that, and it didn't work out, and it bombed. And the kids are looking at me like, coach, I don't understand. It didn't work. Yeah, because I told you what to do. You didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But it didn't go the way it went in practice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's hard to simulate situations like that and think this is exactly how it's going to go, or there's all these variables and things that change. Absolutely. And it sounds like you touched on something that I think is really important, in that in our internet age, and with so many things at our disposal and at our fingertips, it's so easy just to like pull a drill and just see a drill and be like, oh, it works for them. All right, I'm going to use this drill, use this drill, use this drill. And it could be just so overwhelming that you're just pulling all these drills and maybe not necessarily thinking about the benefit of them. And it sounds like you kind of had to go through a mind shift where, yeah, you have all this information at your disposal. You have all these drills that you could use, but they're not really producing the result that you wanted. And so you had to really pare those back and not necessarily get overwhelmed by all the information and all the drills and think you had to use everything. Am I right in thinking that?
Absolutely. And I think what Miami basketball culture is not a great one, right? So what we have a lot of, and we don't our state has kind of revamped their rules over the last 5-6 years, where you're not required to go to certain schools based on location. I mean, you can almost go wherever you want in Dade County. So if kids don't like a certain place or they're unhappy somewhere, they're leaving. They're going somewhere else. I mean, we've had kids that go 3 or 4 different high schools throughout their career.
Wow.
And that's something that I've just always, been unhappy with, and I would love to see change, but I think it won't change until we as coaches change. Like, I think that's our fault, because we do try to control too much, or we do try to coach or cater to the kids because we're afraid they might leave. But I think it comes down to the environment. I think the environment has to be a place that these kids want to be a part of and feel that they're going to grow. And I don't believe a lot of coaches will put it onto the kids and say, well, this is just that type of kid or that type of parent that allows them to do that or is pushing them in that direction. Parents just want what's best for their kids, and a lot of times they just don't know what that is. Kids just want opportunity, and they want to be able to enjoy that opportunity. I see more often than not now kids that are just unhappy, kids that may be talented and would have had these opportunities, but are done with basketball because of their experiences. And I think that that's just a shame. It shouldn't be that way. It's a game. And I love this game, and it's a big part of who I am, and it's a big part of my life, but it is a game. We can use it to help teach them great things, but it's still a game. And I think we as coaches forget that and try to make it a business and try to make it, life or death. And it should not be. It should be something they enjoy. It should be something that they get the most out of. And my favorite part of this is when I have the players that I can talk to when they come back and see me, or they call me on the phone, or they see me on social media and want to ask me how my kids are doing. Like that is the best part of this job. And it's the same thing with my students. In the classroom, when they leave my classroom, I wanted them to have enjoyed that time there. And when they come back and they say, hey, I remember this day in class, man, I was in college and this came up, and I remember when we did that activity. And that's what I look for nowadays. I used to care about winning state championships and wins and, recognition and those types of things. And, maybe it's maturity, maybe it's just reality hits. Having kids has helped me grow too, because, I see too that basketball isn't everything, and that I don't want to spend 3 hours in the gym when I can go home and be with my children. Like those types of things have helped me grow. And I think, I know I'm not perfect, and I know that there's so much more to learn and to grow, but I'm happier. I do think the kids are happier that I'm a part of. I think our parents are happier when they see their kids happy and enjoying the experience. And it's just a big part of it. That's why I do what I do.
Well, what you mentioned is a huge part of hopefully what we do in terms of the experience that we're giving our players. And I think, as you mentioned, if you're defining your success by like state championships or wins and losses, then it's very like a feast or famine, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of almost like external like forces being pressured and put upon coaches and players. But if your philosophy is to make it an enjoyable experience and for them to learn along the way and push them and challenge them, but more of those internal goals that you have for them, I think that's when you're really going to see the benefit and the growth and the happiness, where you're not defining your success based on wins and losses, but rather the growth that the players have and the experience that the players have and how much they enjoyed it. And do those players come back to talk to you later, and do they share, their stories and their experiences with you? And I think if we define success more in that way, we'll have a lot more successful coaches and a lot more happy coaches and a lot more happy players. And it seems simple, but I think that perhaps we've gone so far in defining our success by wins and losses that it's kind of a high pressure, almost miserable experience for a lot of coaches and a lot of players. And it just doesn't need to be that way.
And I think over the last year or so, one of the things I've realized is with, I guess, these positive results, I don't want to call it success because, you never know what somebody else might view as success, but with positive results that I've been getting, I've realized that it's something that I really wanted to share. And during this quarantine time that we've had, where I've had a lot of time sitting at home and getting to think about, all this experiences, it led me to writing a blog, because I felt like this is stuff that could help younger coaches, that could help others. And, that other people to know my stories, hopefully enjoy the stories that are being told, but also possibly learn something from you know, all the experiences that I've had as a coach. And you know, like one of the things when people ask me about it is like, look, it's I'm not going to talk about wanting to be a state championship coach. It's not going to help you win more games, I don't think. You know, there may be some strategy in there, you know, maybe some things that I learned, you know, X's and O's wise, but it's going to be just about my experiences and how I had to learn to change as a coach in order to get what I thought was, or what I think is the most important aspects of it. And I've had good reception on it, especially from my players, because they're like, "Oh, coach, when are you going to talk about me?" So,
That's funny.
but that's why I'm doing the blog, is because I want other people to get to experience this part of it, because I do feel like there are those misconceptions in coaching where people do want to evaluate themselves based on wins and losses, or you know, how much success their team is having, and forgetting about why it is that we should be doing it. And I don't like saying that, because you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to win. You know, I tell the kids all the time, I want to win. Like, actually, I don't even know if it's that I want to win or I don't want to lose. I hate losing. As a competitor, as a kid, I mean, I don't like to lose. So that it always, the angry monster sometimes comes out inside of me that doesn't want to lose and forgets about all these things that I said. Like, it's not easy to do. Like, that was the hardest part about switching gears to the player-centered model, was there's times that I'm going to deal with that. I have to deal with the losing that affects me probably worse than anything. But in order to get to the place that we want to get to, so it's still there, it still comes out, and it's still, you know, I still have to try and push that guy back down. But I also think kids, you know, they adopt sometimes the personalities of their coaches, and that's something that I am happy that the kids get. They do get super competitive and upset. And a lot of times, you know, I'm 38 years old, and I love to get in there and compete with them, you know, to show them that I still got it. And sometimes to show them, hey, look, even though I'm not the athlete that I once was, you know, I don't need to be to beat you. So what does that tell you?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's funny. And so the last part, the last question that I wanted to ask relates kind of back to your balance between your competitiveness and as well as the player-centered model that you talked about, which is your approach in game. So when you're in a game, and the game's going on, how is your, I guess, your demeanor or your conduct, or just the way that you manage coaching in a game, kind of changed throughout the years?
Well, I'll start here. I used to be a nightmare for referees. Like, I mean, there were a few referees when I first started, when I was first getting into being a head coach, that I knew really well. And like, I was happy that one of them came to me one time and was like, the referees hate you. They don't want to referee your games, and they talk bad about you all the time. And it's because I was a jerk. You know, I was yeller, screamer, you know, sarcastic is probably the one thing that they said was the worst. And that was all my competitiveness. It had nothing to do with my coaching, or it was me wanting to win. And, you know, if I could berate an official to do it, I would, but I didn't even notice the bad precedent it was sending. I mean, it allowed my players to think that was okay and to be that way. And if you watch me coach nowadays, you will not see that, not even a little bit. I mean, very rarely will I get on an official, and usually the way I do get on the official now is it's more of a positive approach. Like, hey, you know, I thought that was a charge there. Can you let me know what he needs to do to get that charge? Because you know, he keeps missing. So tell me what he's doing. You know, that's how I do it nowadays. And you know, I used to use all 5 of my timeouts, and if I get through all 5 of them nowadays, it's a rare occasion. It must have been a really close game at the end, and because I want them to learn to play through some of the stuff instead of me kind of giving them the answers. You know, it's a big thing that I encourage is how are you going to figure it out? You know, and early on in the seasons, kids usually look at me like, what do we do here, coach? And it's like, I don't know. It's a good question. what do you think you should do here? What do you want to do here? Solving problems is something that I've really put into their hands, and it's helped me. It's helped me be more calm on the sideline. It's helped me be more patient. I told you that patience was something that I've learned along the ways, and I still think there's a lot more patience I can have. But it's definitely allowed me to enjoy the experience a little bit more, because I used to say all the time, like, man, I like being an assistant coach more than a head coach because I think I see the game better as an assistant coach. And then I thought about why that was. And I was like, well, as an assistant coach, I can't scream at the officials. I can't go nuts because I'm going to get a technical, right? As an assistant coach, I'm interested in what I need to tell the players as they're coming off, rather than worry about every little aspect of the game. And usually I would have, as an assistant coach, one particular assignment, like, all right, I'm in charge of the defense this game, I'm in charge of the scout this game, whatever the case was. So I took that step back and I was like, why can't I apply that to being a head coach? Why can't I sit back and be more analytical and see where I can help them in the areas that they might not be able to help themselves, but other than that, allow them to help themselves? So it was such an eye-opening experience. And I had talked to other coaches about that, which is where I kind of got the idea of, when I was having conversations saying, oh man, it's so much easier an assistant coach. And I'm like, wait, why can't I apply that to being head coach? So it's just part of that experimental process that I went through over the last 5 or 6 years. Like I just wanted to be, like we talked about, I wanted to be happier. I wanted to be less stressed. And it was it was unbelievable, the change. And again, it's still a work in progress, because most half times I go into the locker room upset for some reason, and whatever I'm upset about, maybe I'm upset about the effort, or I'm upset about, we worked on, we emphasized rebounding before the game, and we weren't boxing out the way we should have been, or we weren't as tough. Kids were not handling the pressure adversity as well as we could have, but it's a strange thing, because it always seemed to be better in the second half. Like, that was something about my teams over the last 2 or 3 years, was we were always better in the second half of games, and we were always better in the second half of the season, which obviously allowed us to be better when playoffs would come, or end of season tournaments and things like that. And I was like, wow, maybe this is working out well, so, how can I continue to build on that? And that was, and one of the things I read an article, and I can't remember which coach it was how do you want your players to react in the most pressured situations? Well, they're going to feed off of me. So if I'm a lunatic at the end of a game, like, come on, this is what we have to do, they're going to be like that when they step onto the court. But if I walk into the time, I was like, hey guys, how's it going? All right, we're down 2 here and we've got 10 seconds to go. What do we want to do? I was almost taking the pressure off of them, and it just got better results. Whether we won or lost, we usually got something we wanted. And it's one of those things where I'm like, man, why can't I be like this all the time? I can only imagine what could have happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, you live and you learn.
Yeah, 100%. And it just goes back to what we've talked about a couple of times, and is just like your own enjoyment and the players' enjoyment, and just being less stressed. And I think it's nice to just be able to go to sleep as best you can at peace, and not all stressed out and riled up from the game that you just had, and like you said, ranting and raving, and it's just a more enjoyable experience. And I think that's something that I've tried to also take to heart too, is that those games that you're coaching should be enjoyable. You should be having fun. It should be positive. It shouldn't necessarily feel like a war zone that you're going into and you're completely on edge and completely stressed out every moment. And like you, I'm very competitive as well, and I want to be successful, but I think that the calmer you are, like you said, the calmer you are, the calmer your team is going to be, because we always talk about that, about, those players calm under pressure. Well, what are we as coaches? Maybe we probably need to emulate that and show our players what it's like to be calm in those situations as well. So To wrap up, Coach, what you've shared so many, so I thank you for that. But is there another coaching moment of yours that you think others can learn from?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I do have so many of those, but this is the one thing that I think also pertains to what I've been talking about. Um, there's going to be criticism with this type of model, the player-centered model. There's a lot of criticism because from the outside looking in, when you're not a lunatic on the sidelines, it can look like you're not as engaged as a coach.
Mhm.
Um, I think also, when you see some of when early on things don't look as pretty, it can cause some outside viewership to see it as unstructured or undisciplined and things like that. Which is where I compare like the old school coaching to this new ideology. There's going to be a lot of criticism, from the outside world, and I think one of the reasons why I care as much uh, my last year as a head coach, I had two of the best players I've ever had. Both of them are current Division I players in major programs, um, and both of them. One of them had an MBA, a former NBA player for a parent, and the other one had a father who played. I guess he played at a low level college, but he knew the game, whatever. Um, I allowed those guys to kind of sneakily get some influence over me,
Mm.
because I cared about what they thought. And I went away from some of my values and principles because I was, one, somewhat in awe of one of them because he was one of my favorite players growing up. And then two, I wanted what I thought was in the best interest of our team for those two kids to get the best opportunity that they could have. And I forgot about who I was as a coach. And, that's the one thing that that I think every coach needs to have is a firm foundation in who they are, to
Mm.
be who it is that they want to be, and to be that person because they want to, not because they feel that it will be in the best interest of someone else.
Right.
Um, if you put your players first, that has to be in every decision that you make. And like I said, there's going to be criticism of it. There's going to be times where, like I said, you might lose a game because you are giving your players the power to make some decisions. You watch professional sports and every move is criticized by these coaches. And I mean, it's difficult sometimes because it's hard to not let some of that criticism affect the way you think about things, or maybe you second guess yourself. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have, done it this way. But you have to commit. It's the only way it works.
Mm.
You have to commit to what it is that you believe in. You can't go back and forth. And I think that last year as a head coach, it was just an unenjoyable experience. And it was mostly because I'll take full responsibility for it. It was mostly because I allowed somebody to influence my thoughts and second guess my philosophy and way of I wanted to do things because I thought that it would make someone else happier, or I mean, and again, probably results related. I thought it would get us better results if I listened to what this person had to say rather than know and trust what I was doing and what I had been doing. And again, a lot of that was in the past from when I did think about things differently. So it still was a great learning experience and probably one of the best learning experiences I had. But it's something that I hope coaches don't have to necessarily learn from, because it's tough. It's a tough
Yeah.
situation to look back and say, wow, I failed. I failed completely. I failed the players. I failed, the institution that you represent and you work for. And it was just, but I made the changes that I felt like I needed to make because of it.
Right. Right. And I think that just ties into that idea of just being who you are and knowing who you are as a coach and as a person. And it is a balance between listening to others and taking other people's input versus letting that person or people have that much influence over you that you change your identity or change who you are, and then you look back on it and you realize that you weren't being true to yourself, and it happens. And I think that that's something to acknowledge, but also reflect on and be able to grow from as well. And so that makes a lot of sense, and it's a great thing that you shared. And that ties into the last part here, which is I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox to get out their final thought, closing message, a final idea that they have that they want to share with the listeners. So, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you that floor. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I think what I want to talk about pertains to something that Frank Martin, coach at South Carolina, said. I want to say it was last year or the year before. You know, when he talked about kids, a lot of the things that I hear nowadays is how much the kids have changed. You know, how they're not as tough, how they're not as prepared for real life. You know, a lot of entitlement or whatever the case is. And I think that what he said was that the kids haven't changed; we've changed. You know, that we're still stuck in the past and stuck in certain ways of doing things. I mean, the only thing that I will say that kids have changed is the accessibility to information. You know, that they're way more informed and sometimes over-informed than they may have been in the past. And I think part of that is parents do want to protect their children as much as they can from certain things. But that's always been the case. So I don't know if it's necessarily that we've changed or we aren't changing enough. And that's the one thing that I think that I would encourage all coaches to do, all teachers to do, all people to do is to continue to learn, continue to talk to other people, communicate with others and see what other people are doing. And eventually learn how you can apply that into what you're doing. And I think that it does come down to making an enjoyable environment. I think if you're in a position of leadership and you get the opportunity to lead, whether it's young men, whether it's, you know, a business, whatever the case is, if you do create an environment that people want to be a part of, you're going to see success. And like, you know, we've talked a lot about that over the podcast today. Like, you know, I definitely enjoy what I'm doing a lot more than when I did in the past. And I loved it then, you know, but it's just an opportunity that we have to create something that others will enjoy. And I think that's something that we need to remember, that the kids haven't necessarily changed. It's what are we doing to help them achieve what they want to achieve while making it something that they enjoy doing, you know, because at the end of the day, if we're talking about basketball, it is a game and it is something that they want to do and that they're going to enjoy doing. So why not make it as enjoyable as possible? You know, when I have athletes in my classes in school, you know, that's one of the things we talk about. Like, hey, do you love practice? And it's like, no, not every day, right? But I go, what we're gonna do in here is like practice. It's like you playing sports, you know. I'm gonna do my best to enjoy it. And a lot of times the kids are like, oh, coach, I love football, I love basketball. It's different. I go, maybe so. Maybe football isn't as fun as history is, but we can make it there. We can make it something that you like and enjoy. And I'm going to do my best to do that, but you got to have the right mindset, you know, and I think that's where my foundation comes from, is helping kids have that growth mindset to whatever they approach, to be able to handle whatever comes their way. You know, there are going to be days in practice that you didn't enjoy it, you know. Whatever the reason is, maybe something going on outside, you know, and that's the same thing I tell them in the classroom. There might be a subject matter that you don't like, but that doesn't mean that we're going to shut off from it. We're going to have an open mind. And I think that's where kids have changed is that we, you know, as adults, we've taken the control out of their hands. So they don't always have the growth mindset, but, you know, I think if we give them that control back, you'll see some great results.
Right. Absolutely. And for the record, history is a lot of fun. As a former history teacher, history is a lot of fun. And I think kids should love history. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's great. You know, teaching, coaching, life mantras, lifelong learners, growth mindsets, and all those are just so important. And I really like what you mentioned about the, who's changed the most. I'll never forget a coach was talking to me once, and he brought up that subject, and he was joking about, how coaches might complain about how much players have changed. And he told me, he's like, well, I started coaching when I was 25, and I was coaching 14 to 18-year-olds. And then he went on to say, well, I'm 65 now, and I'm still coaching 14 to 18-year-olds. So I wonder who's changed the most. And it seems simple when you put it that way, but I mean, yeah, we have to adapt, and we have to change, and we have to be lifelong learners, like you said. And the teenage experience now in 2020 is a lot different than it was in 2010, and in 2030 it's going to be a lot different than it is now. But that's just part of the process, right? That's just part of the process, is growing and learning and adapting and doing what's best for kids. And that's kind of been the theme that we've been talking about throughout this whole episode today. And with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much, Coach Landera, for spending time talking about the player-centered model, talking about your experiences and your reflections over your coaching career. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Good luck going forward. Hopefully you have some games to coach soon, and you're in that head coaching spot, making a difference for kids. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Coach Hernandez, for having me. And if any of your listeners out there want to check out more of my stories, they can look at my blog. It's called Confessions of a Basketball Coach. The website is confessionsofAbasketballcoach.com. And, I've got about 6 or 7 posts up there now. And what I want to do is keep sharing my experiences. If I do get the next coaching opportunity that I take. And, one of the things I'm going to be doing is trying to take a log of almost every day and somehow putting that into my blog posts. So just something I want to do. I want to give back. I want to share. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and share some of this information. And I really look forward to listening to it.
All right. We'll definitely include the information to that in our show description. So thank you for mentioning that. And thank you guys listening. Thank you so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.